You guys ready? All right, welcome back to One True Podcast. With me, as always, is my good friend Zach Smith. Zach, how you doing?
It's a beautiful day to talk about some Baylor football.
Okay. It's kind of overcast, and I don't live that far from you, so
I'm more the talk about the football thing. I'm glad to be
gotcha.
back. NFL's
Gotcha.
starting pretty soon here, and college football's back. We got a sneaky good slate this week, so
Yeah.
the football weather is awesome.
Yeah, that's true. It is cooler, that's for sure. We like that. And with us this week is Josh Furlong of KSL in Salt Lake. Josh has been at KSL since 2010, covered the Utes a long time. Here to drop some knowledge. Josh, thanks for hopping on, man.
I'm happy to be here. We'll see if any of my knowledge makes sense.
It's all good. It will make as much sense as anything we have to say, that's for sure.
Amen to that.
So, guys, both Baylor and Utah blasted off to hot starts in week one. Um, Obviously, they were playing overmatched teams, but nevertheless, they took care of business. The 11th ranked Utes beat Southern Utah 49 to nothing. And then Baylor, pretty impressive as well, handled Tarleton State 45 to 3. So Utah, of course, is the Big 12 favorite coming out of the gate, and is naturally favored in this game, as you would expect. I thought the 14-point line was a little high. We'll get y'all's thoughts on that, but what kind of a game are you expecting on Saturday? Josh, we'll start with you, man.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a entertaining game. I think, we saw last year these two teams play, and I don't know if last year is really indicative of what we're going to see this year for either side, especially on Utah, given that they have their starting quarterback back, they have their starting tight end back, they've added a bunch of new pieces, and so I think this game has the opportunity to be a lot of fun. It can be very competitive. One of the things that Utah was a little bit weak on in their first game was a little bit of their interior runs in terms of the offensive line allowing pressure. And that could be a very good thing for Baylor to kind of key in on. And it could be a really rough day for Utah if that continues to happen. So I think for me, the battle of the trenches is kind of where this game is going to be won. Utah obviously takes a lot of pride in winning that battle. And if they can do that, I think they have a good shot to be able to come out on top. That 14 line, yeah, I mean, I know you said you get into it a little later. It was a little bit shocking to me. I saw one as high as 17. I just don't know that you're going to get a lot of that. And maybe it does happen, but I don't know that we know enough about these teams yet to really get a sense of that. So I'm excited for it. I think it'll be a really fun matchup, though.
Zach?
I agree. I mean, I think that, from what I can tell about Utah, their offensive line is kind of their not Achilles heel, but maybe not as experienced as they've been in the past years. But I think Baylor's front seven, even if it was Tarleton State, played pretty well. And so I think if they can get pressure on Cam Rising and kind of get him moving out of the pocket and having to make some of those quick decisions, I think that gives Baylor a chance. And then on top of that, reading some of what Josh has been covering about Utah, I think they're down a cornerback or their secondary is down a little bit. So I know that Baylor's new offense wants to throw it a little bit more. I know they were trying to get some big, deep plays and get some explosives. And maybe if the Utah secondary is a little bit weaker, Baylor could take advantage of some of that. But yeah, I think honestly, I think 14 points is about right. Honestly, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Baylor covered that, but at the same time, I'm also wouldn't be surprised if Utah just kind of rolls because they're really good at home. So, I think 14 is honestly about right.
I'm with Josh, though. Like there's so much that we don't know about these two teams at this
Hmm.
point. We feel maybe a little more confident about who the Utes are, I would say, than who Baylor is. A lot of mystery, I would say, even after, seeing them play last week. Um, Zach, I think you're right. O-line looked pretty good. There was still, to me, and I don't know how much of this was O-line and how much of this was just maybe Dawson Pendergrass, but like when Pendergrass was in the game as the number two back, I thought there were too many like just 2 and 3 and 3.5 yard runs. I mean, it was like, dude, get to the next level and get some separation. I mean, that's Tarleton State. I mean, and I don't want to also, diminish Tarleton State. They're a good FCS team, but nevertheless, I don't know. I was looking for a little bit more there. Hard to you're picking nits when you're talking about 45-3, but at the same time, you look for things that might tell you things about who the team is, and so yeah, it was a close game last year, and Baylor was terrible last year. So we'll see. I think it's going to be a lot of fun for both you guys at the game on Saturday. Um, so Cam Rising, Josh mentioned him. His return to the field went about as well as it possibly could have, I would think. Utah quarterback threw for 5 touchdowns in that win over Southern Utah. So Rising's roundabout journey has been well documented. Zagu even wrote a story about it this summer. Um, Started way back in Austin in 2018 for the Longhorns. Didn't start, but that's where his college career started. Has had 3 different seasons where he has not played at all. One of those was that year when he redshirted, but yeah, just crazy, including last year. So, Josh, I wanted to get your take on this as a guy who covered the Utes. Um, how beloved is Rising there in Salt Lake, and could he rise to the ranks of a Heisman contender? Maybe Heisman finalist, Heisman winner? What do y'all think?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. First off, I'll start with kind of what he's like here in Utah. He's absolutely beloved by the fans. I think he took Utah to a level, obviously, that they've never been to before in terms of, getting to the Rose Bowl. Utah had been to New Year's Six games before, but getting to the Rose Bowl where they had opportunities, win the Pac-12. And so there's always going to be that love. But there's something about Cam where he has this sort of swagger where he is your best friend while also being the ultra competitor at the same time. And I think that exudes kind of beyond just the field, right? I think the fans understand it. I think they understand who he is. He comes out with a lot of confidence and just he is kind of your best friend, right? Like I think he's one of those guys that early on when we talked about him as being the new starter, we would talk to the players and they just say he honestly is your best friend, even if you don't know him, because like you'll walk past him in the hallways and he'll always just want to, ask how you're doing and doing different things like that. That gets a lot of people to buy in on defense as well, right? Like you've got a lot of people that want to fight for Cam Rising. And so there's a lot of stuff that goes on beyond just what happens on the field. Now, Cam as a quarterback, in that Heisman talk, there is potential, right? I don't want to undercut a guy before it even happens. But there's Utah was never really designed up until maybe this year to be a pass heavy team. And obviously those Heisman quarterbacks have to have a lot of passing yards. They have to show a lot. Maybe with how Utah's designed this year, where they want to work more on the outside, where they want to utilize, one of their 6 tight ends that they've got in the pass game. This is an area where yes, there absolutely could be a situation where he could rise to the occasion. Um, but I just don't know if he is that type of quarterback or if that's what Utah's looking for, right? I think, he's never going to be the guy that's out there like a Jackson Dart who's throwing 6 touchdowns in halftime. Yeah, he got 5, but that's just not their game plan. And if it happens, so be it. I think honestly, a good benchmark for Cam is if he could throw over 3,500 yards, that would be a great system for Utah. They don't have a lot. I did the math, and I think there's only two quarterbacks in Utah's history that have ever thrown for over 3,500 yards, which sounds crazy, but that's
Wow.
just how they've been, right? They've always been a
Hmm.
run first, establish the run first, and then, develop whatever passing game you have. This year, they are trying to get more of that passing game. So if there is ever a year that could be the case, yes, Cam could be in that conversation. He's got the skill set to do it. He's not the flashiest. He's probably not going to be a top NFL quarterback in terms of projections, but I think, they love what they've got with him, and I think it's all the intangibles on and off the field that make him a competitor that fans love.
Mm.
And when I think of Utah, I think of kind of a program that's obviously been so consistent for so many years. But I think that kind of the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Is that the right phrase? It's such a culture, such a, Utah is Utah. They're going to go and they're going to play good football and they're going to be a team and they're going to, it's everything, do everything kind of the right way to get the end result. There's not one player where they're putting the team on his back. It might be Cam Rising throwing 5 touchdowns. It might be Burt Keithy getting, how many ever touchdown catches. It might be even Caleb Lohner catching a touchdown pass. So I don't think that, while Cam Rising has probably the best odds on Utah to win the Heisman, I don't think Utah is, if he gets hurt, Utah is still probably a favorite, to challenge in the Big 12. And I think that says more about Utah as a program than Cam Rising as a Heisman contender.
As
I
someone who
will
has
add,
come,
can I add
go,
something
go
to that?
ahead, go ahead.
I think that I agree with all that you said. I think the one little thing though is that you saw how Utah was last year without Cam Rising, and I think maybe that gives him a little bit more of a nod to be in that, right? I agree that Utah is that culture. They are the family. They work together. Everybody is in unison. I would say that Cam maybe elevates beyond what Utah has traditionally been just because of that. And I think you got that example last year. They still went 8-4. So I mean it wasn't a bad system. But I think if Utah wants to be at that upper echelon team, Cam is that guy, right? And so I think, as much as I kind of, pulled him down a little bit and kind of said where he's at, I think there is still kind of that next level guy that he does transcend it maybe more than many have over the years.
Yeah, good points all around. So as someone who has covered Texas high school football for like 30 years now, holy crap. I would say Kyle Whittingham like just feels like an old school Texas high school football coach to me in terms of run the ball, play good defense. That's like every old school, and that's not just Texas, but yeah, I know a million coaches like that. And so I get it in terms of like the scheme, maybe that doesn't necessarily play well into Cam's hopes for a Heisman. Here's what does. If Utah is sitting there at 12-1 after the Big 12 championship game, 13-0 maybe. I mean, within the realm of possibility, I would say. Um, he is absolutely going to get some consideration, I think, just because quarterback for, a team like that, an undefeated or, conference champion team. I mean, 2 years ago, my vote went to Max Duggan as a Heisman voter. So, I think winning does matter. I mean, stats matter, but winning matters too. So that will play well for Cam. So we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. Yeah, so around the Big 12 last week, the conference turned in a pretty solid debut. 14-2 overall. The only two losses were rebuilding Houston. They lost to UNLV. It was sad to see that. I'm a fan of Willie Fritz. I think he's going to do a good job at Houston. um, and then you had West Virginia losing to nationally ranked Penn State. So, who for you guys, who in the conference kind of impressed you the most in week one?
That's a good question. I mean, I think for me, first off, it's been weird kind of transitioning to having to care about Big 12 teams as a reporter.
Right.
Not because it's not been good football. I mean, I'm an AP voter, so I have to care. But at the same time, it's been different trying to like hone in on Pac-12 teams because you're looking, how does this relate to Utah? Now I'm having to do that with the Big 12. So it's taking me a
Hmm.
second to kind of train my brain. But
Sure.
um, I think, I went into that Penn State West Virginia game really hoping that West Virginia could be the team that many were projecting. There was they weren't getting a ton of nods in terms of, being a favorite, but they were kind of that sneaky underdog that a lot of people were talking about. And so on the opposite side of that, I was kind of a little underwhelmed with what they put out there. So putting that aside, I was kind of expecting that. For me, one of the teams that maybe showed out more than I was expecting was maybe Arizona. And I know they're new to the Big 12 too, so maybe that's my Pac-12 reporting ties, but I honestly didn't know what to expect with them, right? I think you lose your head coach. Yes, you had Noah Fafita and McMillan, two of incredible athletes, but that's a lot to undertake in a first year head coach's job, right? And I think, it started out slow, and so I don't want to say that anything was like super special, but I think once they developed that rhythm, there was a ton of love for them. Outside of that, Kansas, I'm really impressed with. If Jalen Daniels can stay healthy, I think this is a team that can absolutely do a lot in the Big 12. So I think those two are kind of the ones that stick out to me right now. There's a lot of consistency, right? I mean, it's hard to look at a lot of these games when it's FCS teams, right? And so it's hard to kind of get a good picture of that. But at the same time, those are the two teams that probably stick out to me the most in terms of just kind of what they could be this year, especially in contending for the Big 12 title.
Dude, how crazy were Tillman's numbers? Like just video game stuff. I mean, even hard to do on a video game, honestly. I saw where he had number like more yards than I don't know, at least half a dozen pretty good college football teams,
Exactly.
including A&M and some others. I
Just
mean,
ridiculous.
yeah, as a receiver. I mean, just bananas. So maybe he's the guy we should be talking about as the Heisman.
Oh, I
Yeah,
think
no
you're
kidding.
right.
Man. And
Zach?
this will come as no surprise to you, Brice. Arizona State was
Mm,
my
mm.
top team. I've been
I
on
should
the
have said
Kenny
that.
Dillingham. I'm on the Kenny Dillingham train. I've been on this train since he got hired, really. But 48-7 over, I mean, what I think is a pretty good Wyoming team. Sam Levitt, former Michigan State quarterback, threw
Mm.
for almost 250 yards. So, like I've said this before, and I'll keep saying it. I really think that Arizona State is kind of a sleeping giant in the Big 12. I really like Kenny Dillingham. I think they're going to have a lot of success. They've got Mississippi State this week, and then they're playing a really good Texas State team down here in Texas. And I really like what Kenny Dillingham is going. I don't think they're going to be good the rest of the year. I think this game might be maybe it's just a one-off thing, but you never know. I'm really impressed with what Arizona State did in week one.
So Josh took probably a team that I would mention would be Kansas. I the trajectory that Lance Leipold has had that program on the last few years. I think a lot of people thought last going into last year, we'll see if the Jayhawks, if that was a fluke, if that was a one-off. And then they turned out to be, just really better, and they didn't have Daniels at quarterback. So, the fact that he is back, and as Josh said, that's the couch that you always have to say with Kansas. If Jalen Daniels can stay healthy, that's a big one. The other thing I would throw into there, this is probably a nod to our Baylor listeners out there, Zach, is if Jeff Grimes could not screw up that offense, right? Oh my gosh. He's gonna do better with better players. That's for sure. So
I was watching that Penn State and West Virginia game, and they were just going through some of the awesome offense that the new offensive coordinator at Penn State was going through. And he used to be at Kansas, and they were just doing all this really fun trick plays going everywhere. And then I'm thinking now Kansas has got Jeff Grimes, where it's like going to have three tight ends on the field. It's going to be 3 yards. It's going to be 4th and 5, and he's going to run for 3 yards. So
we saw that movie a few times last
Yeah.
year. Yeah, all right. We won't spend our whole podcast bagging on Jeff Grimes. Um, totally good dude. So, guys, Zach kind of alluded to it, but week two gives us a bunch of Big 12 matchups that are, Power Four clashes. We have Arizona State, Mississippi State. You mentioned that one. Houston, Oklahoma. Probably not going to go well for the Cougars.
Yeah.
Colorado, Nebraska, Kansas, Illinois, Iowa, Iowa State, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Arkansas, Oklahoma State, and SMU and BYU. SMU now a Power Four team. Weird to think. So from a conference perspective, which of these, if the Big 12 were to win, would be like the biggest feather in the cap for the Big 12?
I feel like the obvious answer has to be Colorado, and not because it's necessarily Even going to have a lot to do with maybe the shakeup at the top with the Big 12 title game or anything that way. I just think with so much attention on Colorado, there no matter what happens, if they beat Nebraska, an old rivalry back in the Big 12 and the two were there originally. I think there just says a lot there, right? Dylan Raiola, he's getting a lot of praise right now at Nebraska. There's a lot of people that want to see him succeed. Obviously, a billion people want to see Prime succeed or fail. I'm sure there's, many of that as well. But I think, the only other one that I was looking at is maybe Iowa State upsetting Iowa. That's obviously a rivalry game that would do well, but I just don't know that that moves the needle beating Iowa, right? And so I think when you're looking at the whole perspective of it, yes, Arizona State beating Mississippi State would be great. It's another notch in the cap against the SEC. But I just don't know that there's anything this week that notches that above a Colorado beating Nebraska, just simply because of the fan favorite, the impact of that game in terms of what people are projecting with Nebraska, what people are projecting with Colorado. So it has its impact, but I don't think it's an impact in terms of what many would expect in terms of saying like, oh, this is a great opportunity for the Big 12 to beat an SEC team. Yes, if you could have one of those games, I think that's always going to do well. But there's always this nice massaging that the SEC can do. Last year, the SEC was terrible in non-conference play, and that they still found a way at the end of the season to kind of massage that conversation and say, we have this tough conference play, and they do, that it doesn't really matter. So I
Mhm.
think to me, you negate a lot of that conversation right now. Yes, if Arizona State wins, then I think, or even, let's say Houston wins, then I think we can have maybe some of that conversation. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, it has to be Colorado, just simply because of the metrics and the numbers and everything else that relate to that.
I kind of disagree. I think, Iowa does, I think,
Oh,
move the needle a little bit, right? Maybe it's just because I'm a Big Ten guy and punting is, I'm flying the flag for punting here, but
you got your
um,
shirt, huh? Punt for win.
only punts.
Yeah.
But Iowa is like Iowa's really good this year. Like they had some big offense. I know that's kind of that hasn't been Iowa's MO for the last decade, but they had some big offense in that first game, and they looked like they maybe had kind of changed some things up with the new offensive coordinator. And on the other side of that, Iowa State was kind of underwhelming. I think they only scored 21 points against North Dakota, and they're supposed to be pretty good as well. So I think that's going to be a really good game that we need to see some questions. Can Iowa State continue to elevate itself to the next tier of the Big 12? And B, I think Iowa, the Hawkeyes are just really good. And that's always a rivalry game, and it's always just passionate and everything. And yeah, so I think if Iowa State beats Iowa, that is a huge deal for the Big 12, and I think tells us really how good Iowa State can be this year.
Yeah, so I hear the arguments for both what y'all are saying, and I kind of agree with both of you. At the same time, I'm going to mention a completely different game. So there you go. Uh, uh, so I'll just throw this one out there. And it speaks to what Josh was saying. Anytime you can beat the SEC, it's a good thing. And so uh, I realize Arkansas is an Old Miss. It's not Missouri. It's not obviously Georgia or Alabama. But I feel like Oklahoma State needs to take care of business and beat Arkansas. And Oklahoma State's right there, I think, with Utah and Arizona and K-State maybe at the top of the league as one of, the contenders this year. So that's a game I just feel like they need to win. It's important for the Big 12, and it is one of those, Big 12 versus SEC, talking points. I completely agree, Josh, that the SEC has a way of saying, oh, it doesn't matter, we're still the SEC and start thumping its chest. But now, to both of y'all's points, Colorado's the buzziest team in the Big 12, maybe the country. If they beat Nebraska, the buzz is just you're not gonna be able to stop hearing it. Yeah, because Prime will be everywhere. We'll be living in primetime land. So that'd be great for the Big 12. And then Zach, I mean, I agree that beating a ranked Iowa team would be huge for the Cyclones. A lot of times, even in Matt Campbell's good years there at Iowa State, Iowa's just had the Cyclones' number. They call that the Cy-Hawk Trophy, is what they, give out for that. It's a big deal in Iowa. They don't have pro sports in Iowa. They have about um, 8 different Major League Baseball teams they can't watch because they're in the land of what am I thought?
Blackout.
Yes, blackout. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. Yeah, poor Iowa. So this is their Super Bowl. And yeah, I mean if Iowa State can win, man, that would be huge for Matt Campbell for the Big 12. It looks like Iowa has like a little more offense this year. Last year, I mean, they were the team that you just knew was going to go out and score like 7 to 13 points and win. It's just they were so ugly. So
But the punter was really good. Really good.
Like your
even
punter.
those punters, man. Uh, all right. So Josh, you probably know this already, but Zach's coming this weekend to Salt Lake. I am not gonna go to the Colorado game, but I'm not making the trip for this one, but I have been to Salt Lake, beautiful place. And I've had some good food there, but we kind of always close with this. We call it Culinary Corner, because we're sports writers and we want to eat, I mean,
That's our
so
MO.
yeah, where is like the place Zach needs to check out, like, or two or three? I don't know.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple. And the first one, it's a fan favorite here. I personally don't think it's the best Mexican food, but everybody wants to say go to Red Iguana. It's right off the airport. It's good food. It's good. It's not great. It's good. I'll say that. Everybody likes to point out their mole, and it's good stuff. But there's better Mexican food, so I'm gonna leave that one to the side. Some of the other places that I think would be interesting, for me. Lucky 13 is one of my favorites. It's a bar, so you do have to have your driver's license in Utah to get in. But it has probably, I believe, if not the best, one of the best hamburgers in the state. They do a nice variety of different things. And so I think you can't go wrong there. I'm not alone in this. A lot of people say that. Outside of that, if you want something that's not Utah, probably Pretty Bird. It's a Nashville hot chicken. Uh,
Nice.
they do a good job there. But there's a handful of stuff. I mean, if you want to go to a bar, the Green Pig. I'm not a drinker, so I don't get into these. But I know a lot of people go to the Green Pig. It's close to Rice Echo Stadium, and so a lot of people will kind of congregate there. I know last year when Florida came to town, they took over that bar and absolutely, probably drank it dry. I don't know. But yeah, there's a few of those. I mean, Utahns love their chains, and so it's getting better. But those are probably some of my favorites that I've been to, and I think if there's any more that you want, I'm happy to oblige. But you can't go wrong with a good burger. Probably one of the best in the state. So
Ooh, you're
Nice.
speaking my language. I
there you
Yeah.
cannot
go. See,
wait.
see, I just had this vibe. He needs a burger, so go to Lucky 13.
Yeah, yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds delicious, making me hungry. Ironically, even though so there's this band called Bowling for Soup that once did a song where they talked about the Mexican food sucks north of here anyway, talking about Texas.
Yeah.
Uh, I have had good Mexican food in Salt Lake City, and I don't think it was the Red Iguana. I think it was a chain, but it was like it was kind of like a Taco Cabana, but it was I can't remember what the name of that place was, but it was good. It was a chain, and you got good Mexican food there. Um, I did while we still had a couple minutes, Josh. You mentioned Rice Eccles and that the bar was close to that. That just place seems to have like a obviously a very good vibe. I mean, the stadium in terms of a home field environment. What makes it so tough?
Yeah, I think it's one of those places where Utah fans are a little slow to show up. It frustrates a lot of people, and so the beginning of the game isn't always the toughest because fans are still coming over from the tailgating lot and different things that way. But it's a fan base that absolutely cares. There's complaints about what could be done and to improve it and yada yada yada. But I think this is a place that they really take on the persona of the team. They really want to do well and be impactful in the game. They have been impactful in the game many years. And so I think it's just a fan base that takes pride in that. Now, you're not going to experience Utah at a night game. Utah at night, for some reason, is completely different. It's like talking to people when they go to LSU at night. It's not that level, right? Like LSU is still the top. But I think there's something different in the dark in Utah that just they love that atmosphere. It plays out so much better. But this day game, it's going to be on Fox. People are going to be amped up for it. People are excited. I think you're going to get a good experience for it, and there's been some good iconic moments there, and that place will rock, and the cameras will shake, and it's just a lot of fans that love their team and want to support them, and will do whatever they can to kind of make that a raucous environment and kind of keep that reputation that they've developed.
Nice. Well, should be fun. I'm sure Zach will get a little exercise in, maybe hike some mountains, go eat a burger at Lucky 13, and then go listen to that place rock, man.
Can't wait.
Yeah, should be fun.